Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create Ellie the elephant. For the grey colour I've mixed white modelling paste with a little bit of black modelling paste to create a nice warm grey. To start with, you want to take 40 grams of the grey modelling paste and roll it into an egg shape, then place the egg on your work surface and gently push down on the narrow half of the egg. At the moment we're shaping the back of the elephant, so the narrow part will become the top of the back and the rounded part will become the bottom, and that straight edge there will become the front of the model. So I'm just going around now and neatening up all the marks left by my fingers, because when I was pushing in you're going to leave fingerprints and marks, so it's a good practice to go around and just smooth out and tidy up your work. You also want to remove any corners. I know they're not sharp corners, but where we've pushed the model down onto the board, you will have a corner going from the flat edge to the rounded side. So you want to make sure your model is nice and rounded and smooth. So I'm just showing you here what it looks like from all angles. Then we're moving on to the back legs. We've got two 4.5 gram balls of the grey modelling paste, which I've rolled into short cones. Then I'm pushing the cone down on the work surface to flatten the rounded end so it's got a nice flat edge. You want to make sure that both of your legs look exactly the same, otherwise you're going to have a wonky elephant, unless that's the look you're going for maybe, I don't know. So now I'm going to attach them onto the model, so they're going onto the side. I'm just using my fingers to press them on. Now I've not used glue because the paste is quite sticky. I'm using Saracino modelling paste for this. You might find that you need to use a little bit of edible glue just to get them to stick. I'm just showing you now what the model looks like from all the different angles so you can see about the placement. Next thing we need to do is remove the join line between the two pieces of paste. So I'm using my thumb and finger just to smooth and pull the paste from the leg so it joins and blends in with the paste of the body. Now, although this may look neater than just having the leg attached to the side, you're still going to see a slight hairline on the join between them. So the next thing we're going to do is use some edible glue or a little bit of water, and I'm dipping my Dresden tool into that, and then I'm going to rub that over that hairline crack that we've got there and blend the two together. So the liquid from the glue actually helps to kind of moisten and blend it just that little bit more so you get rid of the line completely. I've included the entire process in this video because I wanted to show you exactly how it works rather than skipping forward and showing you like, ta-da, here's the finished piece. So hopefully you can see from what I'm doing how this works. If you've added quite a lot of liquid, you'll find the paste will get very, very sticky. So wait until the glue or the water has started to dry before you touch it. Now that I'm happy with the seams at the back, I'm just neatening up the seams that run along the top of the legs, just using the wide end of the Dresden tool just to tidy them up a little bit so that there's no kind of overhang from the blending. Moving on to the front legs, we've got two 6 gram balls of the grey modelling paste, which I'm going to roll into longer cone shapes. Again, I'm going to push the tip of the cone against the workboard to flatten that to give it a nice flat base. You want to make sure that both legs are exactly the same shape and length, otherwise again we're going to have wonky leg syndrome going on. And then trim away an angular piece of the back of each of those cones with a sharp knife. Now the reason that I trim away that piece of paste from the back is so that the legs lie flat against the body once I glue them on. I'm just using a little bit of edible glue here to stick that on. If you want to make your own glue, it's 30 parts boiled water to 1 part Tylo powder. Leave it to set overnight and then you'll end up with a nice gel-like glue the next day. Just like with the back legs, I'm going to start blending the seam for the front legs. So I'm just using my thumb here just to pinch and pull the paste. I noticed the paste was quite dry and it wasn't blending too easily, so I've added a little bit of edible glue just underneath there before I carry on using my thumb to blend the seam. Once I've gone as far as I can go with my thumb, then I'm going to use the Dresden tool and the edible glue again to continue blending the seam. So this bit goes on for quite a while, so I thought I'd just maybe have a chat with you guys instead of leaving it quiet. I decided this year was going to be the year that I'd focus on my YouTube channel, so this is the first tutorial that I've made for the channel in I think a year now. It's been quite a long time. So please leave comments below on any tutorial themes that you'd like me to cover. I'd love your feedback, because obviously there's no point me making stuff if you're not interested in watching it. And back to the video, I just want to point out that this is 2 times speed. If only I could work this fast in real life, that would be just marvellous. Once you're happy with the blending of the seams, you can go in with your fingers once the paste is kind of just slightly less than tacky. If you find it still sticking to you, add a little bit of cornflour, and then you can use your fingers just to remove any of the tool marks that are left. Once I've got the legs on, I realised that the chest was sitting a little bit too far backwards, so I'm just using my fingers here to push the chest forward so that it's sitting more in line with the bottom of the feet. Next up, we need to add the toes, so I'm using the PME mini scallop tool to press down into the bottom of each of the feet just to create 3 small curved lines. I really stumble and stutter over words when I'm doing a voiceover. I kind of wonder if I'm like this in normal life and I just don't realise because I'm not recording myself, maybe? Oh, anyway, it's really difficult and it has to be the worst part of creating a tutorial for me. So much pressure. Here's little Miss Ellie from different angles so you can see what she looks like. Next up, we're moving on to the trunk, and I've got 6.5 grams of grey modelling paste, which I'm rolling into a long tapered sausage. That's a sausage with one end wider than the other. Then I'm going to trim off that wide end because we're going to attach that to the head in a minute. So for the head, we have 35 grams of grey modelling paste, and I've just rolled a groove kind of halfway along the shape, patted away the top edge of the groove so it's nice and smooth, and then pushed my thumbs in to create the holes for the eye sockets. I'm now using my finger just to neaten up and remove kind of the edges of the print that my thumb left so it's all nice and smooth before painting a little bit of glue and attaching the trunk in position. Next up, we're back to blending. I really hope this is useful to you. You can make the head and trunk in one by rolling a ball and then extruding a kind of the trunk-like cone shape from it, but it does kind of restrict with the shape that you can make. And in this tutorial, I really wanted to show how to blend pieces together rather than just working with a single piece. The one thing I will say when working with the trunk, when you're blending the seam here, you'll notice that you're ending up with a slightly narrower portion where you're starting to pull the paste down from the trunk and blend it onto the head. You can see it in the video here. So when you're working, make sure that you keep a nice... what's the word? I actually have no idea what the word is. I really can't think. Anyway, so you want the trunk to remain the correct thickness until it joins the head. So you're narrowing it out, so go round with your fingers and smooth that out so that the trunk kind of blends really nicely into the head without a kind of narrow part in the middle there. You may notice I'm now using the cornflour. This is what I was talking about earlier, so I've dusted it with cornflour and then I can use my finger to smooth the paste. At the moment, the trunk is just kind of sitting there attached to a ball, so I want it to look like it's kind of blending in from the rest of the face. So I'm just adding in the eye sockets again, just by pressing in with my thumb or a finger, it doesn't really matter, to create the bridge of the nose. Then I'm using my fingers to fit the top edge of the trunk into the bridge of the nose, so it kind of gradually goes from the forehead down to the bridge of the nose and then onto the trunk. I use my fingers an awful lot to smooth my work as I go. I get asked questions all the time as to how my models are so smooth. This is why I spend a lot of time smoothing. I'm now using the small end of the Squires Kitchen metal ball tool to make an oval shaped indent into the inner corners of the eye sockets. Then using my fingers just to blend out the edges of the tool marks. And here I'm just showing you what it looks like from different angles so you can see the depth of the holes. Now I'm using the large end of the small ball tool by Squires Kitchen to create the holes for the eyes. They're probably about 4 to 5 millimeters deep, and then filling those holes with 2 balls of white modelling paste. Back to the trunk, I want it to be a little bit curved rather than just hanging there, so I'm just using my fingers to gradually bend it round. Instead of doing the bend really quickly, if you do it slowly and gradually, the paste is more likely to bend without cracking. I'm now adding the opening at the end of the trunk using the small end of the medium ball tool by Squires Kitchen, pushing that into the paste to create a hole and then gently flicking it upwards to create that oval shape that the trunk has. Next up, we're going back to the eyes. So I've got two extremely small balls of black modelling paste, which I'm rolling in my palms into taper-ended sausages. Then I'm going to paint a line of glue around the top and outer edges of the eye before wiping off the glue on the back of my hand and then picking up the small piece of paste, lifting it and placing it in position. I'm then going to use the glue brush to fit the paste around the eye. When you're doing this, make sure the glue brush isn't wet. You want it to just be ever so slightly tacky, and then it will move the paste without sticking or leaving glue marks. So whilst I'm working on the second eye, I thought I'd let you know about my subscription members group. So you can sign up to that group and get exclusive tutorials. So if you enjoy the tutorials I'm posting onto YouTube, then you can get even more for a small fee each month. There are lots of other cool benefits as well, so please drop me an email or leave me a comment if you'd like more information. Now we're moving on to the eyes. So I've got Fractal Colours edible ink pen in brown and a very fine paintbrush. I've dipped the paintbrush in a little bit of water just to moisten it and then touched it against the tip to take the ink from the pen onto the paintbrush, and then I'm drawing in a circle on the inner corner of both of the eyes. To add a little bit of depth, I've got Rainbow Colours dark brown pen. It might be called dark chocolate, I'm not sure. And I've done the same technique again, and I'm painting over the top third of the eye and then drawing around the edge of the eye with that dark colour. Next up, we need to colour in the pupil, so I'm using Magic Colours Black. To make our elephant look more feminine, I'm going to be adding some eyelashes in. Now, I've drawn them in and absolutely hated them. They were wonky. So this is a really good tip for you if you've done a boo-boo. Get a clean paintbrush, dip it in some water, and then paint over the top of the lines and blend them away. Clean the paintbrush off with a bit more water and then use it to remove the rest of the ink. And then you can completely start again and nobody ever knows. So here I am on attempt 2. I've decided to do both eyes at the same time, so I've drawn the bottom lash on both eyes before going in and adding the second lash, instead of doing one eye and then moving on to the second one, which resulted in a bit of wonkiness. So I'm now adding in some small balls of white modelling paste to the upper outer corner of each eye. I've painted a little bit of glue and then lifted up the paste with the glue brush and placed it in position before patting down with my finger. I'm now adding on some creases onto the trunk with the edible ink, and again I drew the lines on, decided I didn't like them and removed most of them using the water technique that I showed you earlier. To give Ellie a little bit more expression, I've got two extremely small balls of grey modelling paste that I've rolled into cone shapes, and I'm attaching those to the upper edge of my thumbprints that were created earlier on in the tutorial. It's now time to attach the head to the body, so I'm pushing a cocktail stick down into the body and then taking off the extra height that I don't need. So you want to make sure it's shorter than the head, otherwise it's going to stick out at the top and ruin your model. And then I'm just pushing the head down onto the cocktail stick just to secure it into position before pushing it down so the head bonds nicely with the neck. You can also use a strand of spaghetti if you don't want to use a cocktail stick. Now onto the ears. I've got two 3-gram balls of grey modelling paste which I'm rolling into teardrop shapes, and then I'm using my fingers to pinch and stretch those out so that we get the large ear shape. Paint a little glue on the side of the model and then attach the ear with the narrow side of the teardrop. If you find that the ear is sliding around, you've probably used too much glue, so remove the ear, wipe the excess glue away and then reattach. And here is Ellie from the front, so you can see how the ears are sitting on the model. Next we need to work on the tail, so I've got a small pea-sized ball of grey modelling paste which I've placed in the palm of my hand, then placed my little finger just off centre and rolled back and forth, so I've got a little nubbin of paste that hangs over the edge. That's going to be the little tuft of fur or hair at the end of the tail. So you can see here that I'm just rolling it out and keeping that little nubbin in position, and then I'm using my fingers just to shape that into, so it's got a little point on the end. Paint a little glue on the wide part of the tail, then lift up Ellie and place her in position. To give Ellie a little bit more character, I've got a small piece of paste which I've shaped into a spiral and I'm attaching that to the top of her forehead. Now I'm going to be giving Ellie some rosy cheeks, so I've got Magic Colours Dust Colour in the shade Baby Pink, and I've loaded up my brush and then wiped off most of it onto a piece of kitchen paper so that the brush has got hardly any colour on it before slowly building up the colour on the cheeks. Now the reason I do this is because if you have a brush that's full of colour, you're going to deposit a really large dark stain onto the model. So it's best to kind of build the colour up slowly rather than just kind of leave a big blob of colour really, which funnily enough is what I did on my very first cake that I ever made. I made a massive mistake and she looked like Aunt Sally from Wurzel Gummidge. Next up I'm making some edible paint. I've got paint mate here, but you can use clear alcohol such as gin or vodka. Mix that in with some dust colour. In this instance I am using Magic Colours Snow White dust colour. So I've got a fairly thick paint and I'm going to be using that to paint in the toes on all of her legs. So that is the tutorial finished. I really hope you've enjoyed my first tutorial back from my abyss of not posting on YouTube. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button, give me a like and maybe a comment as well. Let me know how I'm doing. Of course, I'm really interested to know any themes that you may have, so please again pop a comment below and let me know. If you want to see more of my work, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under the name Yellow Bee Sugar Art.